For the love of black people, please stop. I know all across Louisiana, all across the South, and all over the country, we're hurting. If you heard about Alton Sterling, Trayford Cullen, or Ronald Green, please know that God will see us through. We just can't give up, y'all. Keep fighting. No matter what you're going through, put your faith in God and He will see you through. It's a test of faith. I know you are strong. Just hold on. It won't be long. Brothers are dying and sisters are too. Children all over the place just can't get through. But hold on. Just be strong. Don't you be afraid of all that's going on. The Lord will see you through. I know that He will. I know He must come through, 'cause He said it's in His will. No matter what you're going through, put your faith in God and He will see you through. It's a test of faith. I know you are strong. Just hold on. It won't be long. No matter what you're going through. What's happening, everybody? Thank you all for joining in at such short notice. Listen, we are in for such a treat on tonight. As we are getting ready, prepared to go in, I'm waiting now for the team to come on. I'm waiting for everyone to log on in. So we are currently here. It is 7:02. Thank you guys for joining in. I know it's been a while since we've been live. I know you guys are probably wondering where we've been, what's been going on, what's been up, where there's so many things happening in the community of Lafayette. And we want to make sure that we are guilty of bringing awareness to what's happening in our community. We want to make sure that we are, oh, thank you, cuz I love you so much. Thank you for that. We want to make sure that we are bringing you guys up to speed to all of the things that are taking place in our community. So let's just go ahead and I want to start off with a word of prayer, because of course I believe prayer is always in order as we prepare for the team to mosey on in. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to, of course, gather here in your name, Father. I thank you that you have given us provision. I thank you, Father, that in these times of uncertainty, that you have given us wisdom and guidance. And now I just ask that you would continue to lead and guide as we continue to go about this journey. Thank you for your love, your grace, your kindness, and your mercy. Thank you for continuing to be my strength. Thank you for continuing to strengthen the team. And thank you for everything that you have done. Thank you for continuing to show us support through our various supporters that you have given us. Thank you again for all that you do for our community, Father. Thank you for providing food to the community through the Gethsemane Church of God in Christ. Thank you for providing shelter at times when people have needed it, Father. Thank you for providing clothes through the Village 337 and the Gethsemane Church of God in Christ. Father, thank you for everything that you have continued to give to the people and to allow us to be a blessing to the body and to the kingdom. Father, thank you again for everything. And we continue to give your name the praise, the glory, and the honor. It is my privilege and honor to introduce to you guys two of our executive members. The vice president is here, and also one of our executive team members is here. As soon as they are prepared to join us, I'm going to ask that they would turn on their cameras so we can get ready to add them to the stream. We're going to be having a conversation today specifically geared around social awareness issues, and, specifically talking about police reform, voting, critical race theory in schools, and separating the Lafayette parish and city governments. I think those are important topics that are happening here in Lafayette, Louisiana. And so I'm going to ask again that you guys would share, share, share. It is extremely important that you share what's happening here because, of course, this affects our everyday lives. It affects our community. It affects those that we love and those that we are trying to protect in this world. So, again, as I prepare to add them on, please continue to like, share, and comment, doing what you can to be a blessing to the body. I am excited to introduce to you all. First, I'm going to add Miss Angela, who is the vice president of the Village 337. And let's see, Ange, you are added on. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so again, I want to say thank you, Angela. Oh, there she goes, looking great there, Ange. Thank you for joining in. Before I go ahead and add Heather, I just wanted to introduce you guys separately and say to you, thank you for, of course, joining. Please do me a favor and go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone. Let them know who you are and how you got here.
Hi, so I'm Ange, and the vice president of the Village 337. Of course, everyone knows the village was birthed, unfortunately, through the murder of Trayford Pellerin. Um, and I kind of just joined in, taking over the streets that day after I had assumed that my son may have been the victim of that shooting that night from the video that was circulating on social media. I did find out it was not him. However, it did prompt me to get involved with activism collectively. Because prior to that, I had been doing things individually on my own and advocating for others with mental health issues and others in the community for people of color. So here I am. I'm a mental health counselor. I'm in it for the long haul. We'll see what happens. We'll keep working for change in our community.
And I just want to say personally, thank you for continuing to be in this fight and continuing to do what you do because God knows if it were not for you, I don't know where I would be. Specifically speaking, as the president of this organization, we've been through some rough times.
Yeah.
There have been times when, if I'm being transparent, I've wanted to give up, and you have made sure that I didn't do that. Letting me know the importance of this work and that God is seeing it and that the people care and the people see it. They may not say it all the time, but they do. So thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and drop you off, and I'm going to get Heather on, and then I'll get you guys both on, okay?
Okay.
All righty, that was Miss Angela Eaglin, guys, Vice President of the Village 337. Now we have Miss Heather, who is one of our executive members, and that Heather, that looks so much better.
Okay.
Yeah,
Trying
you
to get
might
situated.
tilt your camera down a little bit if you can.
Okay. I don't know.
No, okay, 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 that looks
Hold on.
great.
Let me see if I can make an adjustment.
Okay, all righty.
And I'm
Whatever you just did, that flipped you. That
oh,
flipped you too. Yep.
it's not cooperating. Okay.
That's okay. However you had it, that's fine. As long as we can see
I
you.
don't know if
So,
I can hold it. Am I there?
yep, you're there. All righty, guys. This is Heather. Heather is one of our executive members of the village. Heather, if you don't mind, really quickly, introduce yourself. Let the people know who you are and how you got here.
Hi, my name is Heather. I so wow, so much has happened since
Yeah.
then. I lost track. Yeah, so I've done advocacy for a very long time, and um, whenever Trayford was murdered, I felt the need to get involved locally. So I did that. Started off with maintaining his memorial,
Okay.
and from there just continued. to stay involved.
Okay. All righty. Well, I appreciate you, Heather, for all of your work, for keeping me grounded and making sure that that the our team has what it needs, and for doing what you do. Like I told Ange, what we do is very difficult at times, and so I appreciate both of you guys for continuing to hang in there and for sticking it out. And so I'm going to add Angela back on. And we're just gonna have a very, very just real conversation about what's happening here in Lafayette. We're gonna bring up a few things, and first, while we are at the beginning of this, I want to first talk about Chief Glover and what happened with him. As you all on Facebook and YouTube and wherever you may be watching may remember, Chief Glover was Lafayette's first Black chief of police, who was appointed and hired, of course, by our mayor, the mayor president, Josh Guillory. And initially, of course, we recognized that this was an attempt to, of course, get in good with Black people and try to smooth over what he had messed up with the Black community when Trey Pellerin was murdered, when he did not refer to him as a human being who had lost his life, unjustly. And we had to, of course, address him in that manner. Many people know what happened in the streets of Lafayette at that time. And so we're now facing a situation where this was a police officer who came in, and we did not trust that this was going to work out at all. We were skeptical from the beginning. We felt maybe that this was going to be a yes man who was going to do whatever the mayor president wanted him to do, and that this would not be good for the Black community in any way, shape, or form. But actually, the contrary happened. From what we understand by the former chief of police, he was actually told by the mayor president to clean up the police department. So it seems that the mayor president at some point wanted there to be a clean sweep of the police department. He understood that it was corrupt. He understood that there were some things that needed to be changed. And he charged our chief of police to do such. Now, this was also someone who the former Chief Glover, who was making attempts to bridge the gap between police and the community. He was doing that. I mean, many of us, again, were skeptical, and many of us were very hard on him at first coming in, myself being one of those people. But the chief made many attempts, and he continued to reach out to us and continue to extend the open arm to us, to be able to make that bridge and to make that relationship better with our community. We were aware of many attempts of the former chief of police to go ahead and clean up what was happening in the police department. And not only that, but to also make our community a better place by implementing many programs that he wanted to start, much like the many programs that we have been discussing with the Village 337 2022 initiative that we wanted to launch this year, that we will be launching this year. By the end of this month, you guys will be having our full-on plan for that. The chief had all of these amazing ideas, had all of these wonderful things that were happening, and all of a sudden he was randomly fired. We know that the chief prevented many trade Pellerins from happening again in the city of Lafayette. And since he's been gone, there have been many, many police-involved shootings. You all know about what happened to Tyron Coates, who was murdered by the Lafayette Police Department. And so that's the first thing I'd like to discuss here with this wonderful panel, is what do you guys first, any comments or commentary on Chief Glover or on that whole situation? Anything that I missed maybe in that?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
So I guess my first question about that to you guys is, where do we go from here as a community, number one, but also as many of us who are community activists and leaders, and what do we tell the people? if tomorrow we have, because tomorrow's the hearing for Chief Glover, where he's going to be appealing for his job back. Um, and if tomorrow we wake up and we believe, I mean, the likelihood of happening is that he won't get the appeal. And the reason why isn't because he shouldn't, but simply because that's the way the system is set up here. And if that happens, what do we tell the community tomorrow?
Hmm. I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it yet.
And I feel like we should definitely tell the community this is why we encourage people to come out and get involved. The system is flawed. It's definitely not meant to serve people of color. It's definitely meant to lean more towards the oppressors and whatever advantage they may have. Laws need to be changed. They need to get out and vote. Even if you don't vote, you need to register to vote so you can vote people out when they're not doing a good job. We also would need to tell them, hey, this is what happens, because we don't have enough systematic change. We don't have enough people getting involved. And this is what you can do about it in the future. And I think it's also important to tell them, even if he doesn't win the appeal, it probably won't be the last that we hear from Mr. Glover in Lafayette.
All right, I think that was that was really good, and certainly I'm my prayer is that it won't be, and I think that it's safe to say that it definitely won't be the last you'll hear from him. And Mr. Glover certainly knows that he has our support one way or the other. Here, when you talk about registering to vote, which is a great segue to talk about that subject. Why, as we are here in this moment where we have, the mayor president of this very city and parish doing things like firing the first Black chief of police, and something that Black people felt proud to celebrate in that moment. And of course, as you guys know, we really didn't celebrate that moment because we were skeptical of what that meant. But many people in this community celebrated that moment. And it makes me really think about where we are as it relates to our understanding of how civics works here in Lafayette. And so we have an appointed chief of police, which means that the mayor president, which is what we're going to talk about next, right? That title, mayor president, what that means and how that needs to change. Well, the mayor president, meaning that he is the mayor of Lafayette, but the president of the parish, he has the ability to hire and fire the chief of police. Now, that can be problematic. And the reason why that can be problematic is because when you have the person, much like the governor being able to hire and fire the state colonel, right? When you have the leader of an elected official who has been elected to run a city, okay, and he is a human being who is elected by the people, but he should not have the responsibility, or she, of hiring and firing the person that is over the people who protect the city. That should be left up to the community. That should be left up to the people. The people should decide who the police chief is. The people should decide who is. But the problem that we have with that is that you'll have a situation where someone like Reggie Thomas can get elected in a citywide position as the first Black marshal. And if the chief of police is an elected position, I think that they're afraid that Republicans might lose control of who the chief of police is here in Lafayette. And so it speaks to the inherent racism that exists in our community, because what it says is that we don't want to give up that control because here it go here it goes. So we're connecting again the parish and the city, right? So being that the city of Lafayette has to share the mayorship with the president of the parish, this means that the person who runs the entire parish of Lafayette gets to choose, not only run the city of Lafayette, but gets to choose things like the chief of police for Lafayette. And that is not fair whatsoever. First of all, we need to have our own mayor. And that needs to be something that needs to be a campaign that we run heavily, that Lafayette has its own mayor. I know right now there are attempts to have the charter split to where the city and the Lafayette, I mean the city and the parish are no longer one, right? Where
Right.
the city has its own mayor and the parish has its own mayor. And that is extremely important because right now we're in a situation where, you know, our chief of police, this was somebody who was really bringing about change in our community. And all of a sudden, for political reasons, he was fired. I think it all is centered around race. And I think that there is no other way to put it, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We're dealing with a race issue here in Lafayette, Louisiana. And so when you talked about voting earlier and you talked about if you don't want to vote, in order to take some of these crooked politicians out of office, you still have to be registered to vote. And what that means is, for instance, many people wanted us to do a recall against John Bell Edwards. And this was over a year ago when we knew that he was covering up the murder of Ronald Green.
Exactly.
And, you know, the problem with that was that we simply just did not have enough people registered to vote in order to get the recall done. And here's why I say that, because many of our elderly Black people and Democrats want to protect John Bell Edwards. They feel like he's our savior, and it's, you know, it's unfortunate because it speaks to the mindset, and it speaks to the reason why it was so hard to get a moderate Democrat in office here in Louisiana. I believe the state with the second highest number of Black people. We are seriously I'm sorry, guys. I just got a text that I needed to answer. We are seriously, guys, in troubled times because, you know, our people really don't see the problem with that. I've been, you know, many people that support us have felt a little weird about supporting us on that issue because they don't want to touch that. They're like, if we lose John Bell Edwards, a Republican's going to get in office, and I'm like, how? That should encourage more of us to go out and push against having conservatives in office. You see, because what we have is what I call a closeted Democrat or a closeted Republican dressed up and robed as a Democrat
Right.
in office. Anybody want to touch on that?
I think, you know, Governor JBE appealed to the masses at the time when he was running. It was a big deal for a lot of people of color. You know, I remember hearing it a lot, returning the state blue. And I'm like, they must be crazy. It's not going to happen. It may appear that you're turning the state blue, but it very likely will be red for quite some time. So he appealed to those masses and got their vote and got in. Yes, he's a registered Democrat who functions as a Republican, in my personal opinion. If anyone has seen anything different, I'd love to see evidence of it. But overall, that's what I've observed.
You know,
Our last
go ahead.
governor before John Bell Edwards, was that Bobby Jindal?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay. I was just trying to remember the sequence.
Yeah. And then before him, we had a Democrat, right, which was
No,
it?
did we?
So our female governor was a Republican.
Oh no, she was a Democrat, but I thought there
Yeah,
was someone else in there.
There might have been somebody after her, before Jindal. But it
Mike
just
Foster. I don't know.
what you said, Ange.
Was it Mike Foster? I don't know.
Might have been. It might have been. But guys, this again, it speaks to the mindset of our people, because if it was difficult to get John Bell Edwards in office, um, because of the fact of the fact that there's a lack of registered voters, we shouldn't be waiting for elections, the election cycle, to register people to vote, or to be having these types of conversations. In the next couple of days and weeks, I'm going to be adding more people to these conversations, and this will all be geared towards specifically an audience of young people. Essentially, we're going to hopefully try to bring all of this up to one massive um, uh, um, what is the word that I'm looking for? Virtual, actually hybrid
Mhm.
summit that we will have, where we will, ask the young people specifically, what is it that is where is the lack of engagement coming from? Why is the lack of engagement happening within your community? What is it that well, I can even say, consider myself one of those people, but what is it that our elders are not doing, and those of us that are aware enough are not doing to engage these demographics? And it's specific, because it's no reason, guys, that we are in the second blackest state in the United States, and we're having issues with getting Democrats elected. And I mean progressives. Let me say that we're having issues with getting progressives elected. Hey, Kitty. So I think I heard Joel's back there. Listen, we welcome the guests. Okay, tell Joel's I said hey, Ange.
Well,
Okay, and so we have found ourselves now in this place where our lack of civic engagement is unfortunately affecting our daily lives. Um, Looks like I froze for a second. Our lack of civic engagement is affecting our daily lives. And so, because a lot of our community has just kind of let all of these things that have happened in the last couple of months and years just kind of roll off of their backs and off of their necks, then now we're in a situation where we don't have what we need in office. We don't have the amount of influence that we need in order to have serious conversations about legislative change that needs to take place to make sure that we have, for instance, the amount of resources that we need to handle inflation. In other words, there's nobody talking about up and minimum wage in Louisiana. Now, I know a lot of places are starting off at $10 an hour now, like McDonald's. I know is starting off at $10 an hour, and that's wonderful. But the government needs to step up. The government needs to do better. There needs to be serious talks about police reform. I went and testified at a state senate hearing on qualified immunity. And at the same meeting, it was, I believe, the open carry laws were discussed at that meeting. There's so many things that are taking place in our community, and because of the lack of civic engagement, in other words, because the community is not involved in the process, we're suffering. And it goes as far as our people even dying as a result of it. And so we have got to find ourselves more serious with engaging our community with these issues. because we are, and when I say dying, I'm talking about police brutality. I'm talking about the all of these epidemics that are taking place with drugs, with when you talk about community violence, what that's happening within the communities, when you're talking about a lack of equity and overdoses and suicide that's happening in our communities. These things are as a result of our lack of civic engagement in order to get the right people in place in positions of power, so that we can make sure that our needs are being met and taken care of. Now, many people say, well, you can't rely on the government, this, that, and the other. And I'm not asking anybody to rely on the government. I'm asking you to demand that your government does its job. Okay, that's the purpose of, it's like saying I'm not going to rely on the doctors to do their job. No, listen, let me tell you something. I'm a believer, and I pray to God that he heals my body and takes care of me. But I also understand, he's given me wisdom to understand that there are doctors who have a certain a spectrum of knowledge and understanding and a legal responsibility to make sure that they do their very best to make sure that I'm as healthy as possible. So when we're talking about these issues and we're talking about civic engagement, I don't want people to get it twisted. I don't want you to think that your government has to do everything to make your life better, but your government should be working for you. Mm-hmm. And we cannot say that our government is working for us. We can't say our government is working. Go ahead, Heather. Go ahead.
You have to tell them what to do. They work for us. I mean, technically, that's what's supposed to happen. Ideally,
they're servants.
But if you're telling them what to do, they just do what they want more than expected.
Well, I love the way you said that, because they are servants. Elected officials are servants, and when we think of servants, we think of somebody who, almost in a sense, I hate to make that comparison, but servants are considered like slaves. They do what they're told, when they're told to do it, how they're told to do it. And the people are their servant, are their masters, essentially, because the community elected them. They went out and voted for them. Some of them campaigned for them. They canvassed for them. They went out blood, sweat, and tears to make sure that they were the ones who were in the position of power. And even when somebody didn't vote for you, even just because they didn't vote for you or they voted for somebody else or they didn't vote at all, guess what? They are still your boss, because you are a servant. You serve the people. This is not this is not like a private, you don't work for a private company. You work for the public.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we understand our positions as employers, when we understand that we are the employer of these elected officials, then things begin to change. Things begin to shift, because I don't owe you an explanation. You owe me one. I don't have to explain, because there were many people. An elected official had the audacity to basically tell me I don't know what I was talking about, and that I needed to be quiet. Somebody that's known me since I was a kid. Now, let me just make something very plainly and very clearly. I've never been able to be silenced or quiet since I was a child. Now, this individual should have known better. So it's still not going to happen today. But the arrogance that comes with some of these elected officials is absolutely disrespectful. And so I had to let that person know, I understand my role and position in this. You better quickly get to learn yours. See, power has a sense of sometimes making people feel that they have something that they don't. And when people become elected It should humble them, but sometimes the opposite happens.
Well,
And
I
so,
think maybe the word, it's not power, it's responsibility.
hmm,
And they take it as power.
hmm. Well, I think I agree with that, but I think sometimes when people have a certain level of responsibility, it does give them power. And
Right.
so, and so ultimately what happens is that responsibility gets to their head and they don't know how to maintain the power
Hmm.
that's given with that level of responsibility or that comes with that level of responsibility. And so because here's the thing, I have no issue with people having power because that stuff transfers, right? That stuff comes and it goes. Life
Hmm.
is it's all a cycle. We live, we're born, we live, and we die, and you can't take it with you. I have no issues with that, but the issues that I have is when there is a certain specifically here in the way our politics works, right? The way that our civic process works. We elected officials are servants, and we are the people who employ them and hire them. And if we don't assume our responsibility and recognize that the power belongs really to us, then
Hmm.
they can do whatever they want with the power that we give to them.
Hmm.
Well, and as a matter of fact, as soon as we assume our responsibility in the civic world, then we take that power from them. And essentially, Heather, going back to what you said, they only have responsibility because the power is to the people. But what has happened is because the people they stop their involvement and engagement at the polls, that's the extent of how involved they are. The people lose power. And it's given to the individuals that are in office. And at some point, they just start to do what keeps them in office, and that's it.
Right.
So, before anybody have anything to add to that?
I was just going to add, it is a responsibility that turns into a form of power for them. But I think they also forget it's a privilege to serve the people as well in that manner.
Yeah, yeah. It's the mindset of it, right? Like, how are you when you think of this? Do you think of it as I'm so wonderful, great, and mighty that y'all should be lucky that y'all have me to do this job, or do you think of it as as you said, in that humbling aspect of this is a privilege, this is an honor. Like I'm humbled because the people chose me to serve. That's the difference. And that mindset makes all the difference in how the people in the community are treated. And so, guys, I think this is a great conversation for us to continue to have. I don't want to keep you all too long because I want to make sure that Angela and Heather come back at some point and join me. So I don't want them to say, "Oh no, you do those things too long." But I'm excited about where we're starting off. I'm excited about what's going to happen next. And I think as we continue to do this for the community, you guys can continue to look for updates. You guys can continue to look to hear from us. I apologize that there have been gaps, that there have been inconsistencies, and I promise to do better as a leader, as an influencer, as all of the things that that I am, and I will be more consistent. We have got to become. Thank you, Ange. Thank you, Heather, for joining in. You guys have been great. I really appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless y'all. Love y'all.
Love you so much.
We have got to become, guys, more engaged socially, and we have got to be aware of what's happening in our community. There are many things that are taking place in the community that's happening right under our noses. And my hope and my prayer is that we can continue to do the good work. we can continue to work without ceasing, without having fear of retaliation, without being afraid of gaining some information and knowledge that may send us and cause us grief. God is giving me a word, and so I want to preach that, but I'm sure that opportunity will come later in the week. Today, I wanted to talk about our civic duty and responsibility, and I will continue on with this series probably all through the week and probably into next week. Thank you again for joining. Thank you for continuing to be the best part of what makes this this work not only possible, but what keeps me going and keeps me doing this work. I love you. May God bless you. May God continue to keep you. Remember, it's not a moment, it's a movement.